We formed a quorum and I call the meeting to order. Please invite the administration and representatives from the WKCDA to join us.
Good afternoon. Let us welcome Mrs. Betty Fung, Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs, and her team, as well as Mr. Michael Lynch, CEO of WKCDA, and his team. Welcome. The first thing on the agenda is progress of the Xiqu Centre. Mrs. Fung, over to you, please. Thank you. On the 28th of March, at the joint subcommittee meeting, the WKCDA introduced to members the latest progress of the Xiqu Centre project. Together with the WKCDA, would like to report to you the latest situation. First, the construction works completed in end last year, and the superstructure works started in late 2014. In general, the progress is on target, and the target completion day is 2017. We have organized a number of activities to nurture the audience as well as new talents. Starting from 2012, we've been organizing the West Kowloon Bamboo Theatre, and earlier this year we had the Rising Stars of Cantonese Opera 2015. Just this month, we have got the Tea House Theatre replica, and we are trying to gauge the feedback of this model. The Xiqu Centre has maintained very close liaison with the sector in terms of performance and cultural exchange. They've enjoyed very close cooperation. And this year, the WKCD will conduct recruitment of the senior management position of an artistic director and a general manager. And I will give the floor to Mr. Yu from WKCD to give us a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. I will give a PowerPoint presentation to brief members on the latest development of Xiqu Centre. The first slide shows the works site of Xiqu Centre. It was taken a few weeks ago, and we have made more progress since then. You can see pillars and structures and superstructure. We have got a short video clip for your information. Mr. Jeremy Stowe can walk through this with members.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. So this is a video taken by a flying drone, which was taken about 6 weeks ago on the construction site of Xiqu by the contractor. And we intend on taking a similar video every month that we can make available. So you can see here the foundations was completed last year, and the superstructure of the Xiqu Theatre commenced in December. So this is about 3 months into the construction of the superstructure. You can see there the MTRC noise mitigation deck in the background, which has a bit of interface with our site. And also some utilities there, storm drains, etc., at ground level. So to date, the construction is progressing well. We still have a long way to go, another 2 years at least, but at the moment we're off to a reasonable start. So that's our site in the foreground, and you members can see the XRL site in the background. To date, we have 3 tower cranes which are now erected on site if you drive by today, and we're just putting up the mega columns which will enable us to create the theatre and lift it up as it's a suspended theatre. Okay.
Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy. The next slide. As what we had earlier, because the superstructure is in progress, we haven't got the bamboo theatre this year. Now this is the Rising Stars of Cantonese Opera 2015. We have put together more than a dozen young artists aged between 20-something to 30-something. They staged 10 performances. Mr. Lo Kai-ying was the artistic director or coordinator of the event. So the Xiqu Centre is committed to nurturing a new generation of artists so that 2-3 years down the road, when the centre is up and running, we have young local artists performing. They are very young and vibrant, and they were well received by the audience. We had 10 performances in the new wing of Koshan Theatre. We will stage similar events in the coming few years, hoping to nurture new and young stars. Another thing which is very popular in town is Xiqu Cultural Exchange Program. We have started exchange programs and networking with performing troupes on the mainland. Just a few months ago, or a month or so ago, we sent a delegation of 10 emerging talents to Hangzhou to visit the Zhejiang Xiaobaihua Yue Opera Troupe for cultural exchange. We also let young artists understand what's happening in other performing troupes, and our center is networking with other organizations on the mainland. We hope that when we open in 2017, a network is already well established. This is taken from a scene when they were learning. And we've also got a tea house theatre taster with 200 seating capacity for smaller scale performances. However, this is rather new in Hong Kong. Snacks and a tea will be served as people watch the performance. We had trial run at the Lyric Theatre of the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts not long ago, and it was covered by the media as well.
This is going to be a new format for Cantonese opera, for Xiqu performances. And we will provide special facilities for the tea house theatre. And in the trial, we tried to test how the audience received the new format. This is an innovative approach. We hope we would be able to bring a new type of experience for Xiqu audience. We think this will be attractive to people who are new to this Xiqu genre. This is by way of an introduction. We are happy to take questions from members. All right, the floor is now open for questions and comments. 4 minutes each. Hands up, please. Miss Claudia Mo, Mr. Xiqu Centre, Miss Amelia Lau, Dr. Helena Wong.
因為佢呢個新咪嚟。好。
Please speak into the mic, Chairman. Okay, can you hear me? Miss Mo?
Rather minor question, but it's not minor to me, certainly. It's got a lot about Hong Kong identity. We are essentially very much a Cantonese society. If you're erecting something that is a Chinese opera center, please, instead of calling it Xiqu, which is quite unpronounceable to many foreigners, can we not at least just call it Xiqu Centre, or for that matter, even easier for English-speaking people, Chinese Opera Centre? Is that possible at all? I know this is a rather late stage, but I understand that you only have had a plaque in Chinese made, but nothing in English yet. So can you reconsider this?
我諗呢個問題咧，就其實咧早2年前咧。Mr. Lynch， 我講咗兩句先。
I want to say something first, Mr. Lynch. Actually, the same issue was raised 2 years ago, and now we are already in the middle of the course of action. So, Mr. Lynch, a brief response will suffice. I think I'm the chairman. I think there's no need to repeat questions already raised.
Xiqu Centre has been the working title. From our point of view, if some major donor wanted to spend some billions of dollars on naming rights for the theatre, we may consider that subject to discussion with the LegCo down the track. But at this point, no, we see it as an adequate title to represent the many different Chinese opera forms. And at this point, that's something that ultimately the board of the West Kowloon Theatre will resolve closer to the opening. But it is still an issue that we have some discretion over. So we take your point on board.
Yeah. But you're basically
well,
saying
we could
that
call it the LegCo Theatre if he'd give us a couple of billion.
So it's a matter of money.
我諗毛議員，你俾佢答先好冇啊？
Not necessarily.
OK， 我諗好冇。
Ms. Mo, please let him answer your questions. And then you can raise your other questions.
Money, but clearly looking at the issue we've for many years talked about how we're going to sustain the theatres, how the theatres would be named, the issue of naming rights and the views that the LegCo have over that issue. At this point, we think it's been the most neutral way of dealing with the issue by calling it Xiqu.
It's not neutral at all. It's not Hong Kong.
Well, we are in Hong Kong and in China, I suppose. That would be my view. And we intend to be the home of Cantonese opera and of other Chinese opera forms, as we've indicated in the presentation. And but that's an issue that we've argued it for now almost over 2 years. We think probably the arguments will continue, subject to making the progress on the more important issues of building the building and establishing its method of operation.
Okay.
好，仲有冇補充問題？冇就
Supplementary questions? If not, Mr. Xiqu Centre. Thank you, Chairman. There will be some activities before the commissioning of the centre. Well, these are meaningful activities. I think organizing such activities will be able to promote WKCD, and I hope to see more. It's important that we do more. You have mentioned a number of activities, and among them, we have this program for young and rising stars of Cantonese Opera 2015. In the future, will the centre be doing some more promotion along the same line? Can we get some elaborations here? And turning to Tea House Theatre Taster, in Beijing, the similar service is provided. You serve tea to the audience. So for the one that you have tried, who are those people attending the trial? How did you reach them? Did they buy tickets from you, and what are the merits of promoting your work in the long run? Mr. Yu, regarding the first question, and the reason why we have organized the Rising Stars of Cantonese Opera 2015 program. Actually, they are young stars, they are experienced and veterans, opera singers in those performances. And we are expecting a very new venue for Cantonese opera. We would like to bring this to audience in Hong Kong and also from other places. And we also want to show the so-called young face of Cantonese opera. And in the coming years, there will be more programs featuring rising stars in Cantonese opera. This is much supported by Ba Wo and the sector. We are going to cooperate with these stakeholders in organizing more programs for rising stars, because the experienced performers will retire in due course. We need new blood, and also in the Hong Kong APA, the HAB, and WKCD have all been working hard to promote rising stars. And turning to the Tea House Theatre Taster, well, it's an internal trial run, because it was a space created at the Lyric Theatre of the Hong Kong APA, and half of those attending are from the sector, and we also invited people from the tourism sector. We have people from the Hong Kong Tourism Board, and also potential donors and supporters, as well as people representing the academia. And also, we have also invited people who have never been to any Cantonese opera performance. And after the performance, we asked them to fill out a questionnaire to gauge their views and to see what is attractive to them. These are new audience, people who are not very familiar with Cantonese opera. In the future, if we have 1 or 2 performances daily, then I believe for local audience, for the tourists coming to Hong Kong, we would like to present something that is approachable, that is easy to access. So we are going to have another trial next year, and at the next trial, we may consider selling tickets to attract a wider audience. We will carry out more trials. Are there more young people or the senior citizens? Half of them are under the age of 50, and another half over 50. For Cantonese opera audience, they think that the performance is too short. It's because it was just 1.5 hours, and usually the duration is 3 hours. We would like to make this Tea House Theatre a venue where people would go to see their first Cantonese opera performance. It's Emily Lau. I hope the project will go on smoothly, and that the budget will not be exceeded. And we hope that it will bring to Hong Kong, bring our artistic scene a new development. I want to ask a question about nurturing new talent. You mentioned Hong Kong APA. Do you have any joint programs with Hong Kong APA and other institutions in nurturing a new generation of performers and also to build audience? We need audience that can appreciate this form of opera performance. So do you have a timetable? We cooperated with two joint organizers. Well, you don't have to speak so close to the mic, Mr. Yu. This one is a cooperation project with Hong Kong APA. On the stage is a member of the young troupe. And for this one, Rising Stars of Cantonese Opera, many of those performing are young performers of Park War. We mainly cooperate with Park War and Hong Kong APA in nurturing new artists and new performers. We do not do it alone. They are our partners. We do not run a school as such. On the question of audience building, in particular, a young audience, well, in the past, when we had the performances in the Bamboo Theatre, there were more elderly people attending than young people. For this tea house theatre taster, we would like to make sure that this is a comfortable experience for young audience who may come alone or with friends. With the Xiqu Centre, there will be a very well provided venue. We would like to attract people who wouldn't otherwise be attracted to the Cantonese opera's performances. We'd like to see if we can explore this so that on a daily basis we can have 1, 2, or 3 performances so that we can attract a younger audience to the venue. But before the venue is available, we are going to do 2 or 3 such performances before the Xiqu Centre is ready.
Chairman, would it be the APA or other institutions? I'd like to know whether many young people enjoy enrolling in these programs. And then some university students came to find me and show me pictures wearing such costumes and singing Cantonese opera. From Hong Kong, you were there. So are you aware that some students are studying in these institutions are interested, and do you have channels for them to perform? Yes, I think we have spared no efforts in nurturing young audience and artists. The APA has recently started a 4-year degree program in addition to its higher diploma program. It has also got a school of Cantonese opera. And with the Chinese Artists Association of Hong Kong, we have a partnership scheme in Yau Ma Tei. We just renewed it in 2012. It's a 3-year program to allow emerging talents to perform there. Every year there are over 100 performances by new talents. So we have more venues for training. And recently there is also a scriptwriting competition so as to have a new repertoire. So there are new scripts and stories emerging. So if young people are interested, they want to have a try, they can join programs by the Hong Kong Chinese Association of Hong Kong, and they have the performing opportunities in Yau Ma Tei. Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I want the Xiqu Centre and other facilities at WKCD to be commissioned on time, because the site has been left idle for many, many years. I have a few concerns here. This morning, we had a meeting on the terminal of XRL. The terminus was expected to be completed in 2017, but then, according to the report this morning, because the works were complicated, they were still reviewing and projecting the completion date. So there's a likelihood that come 2017, the XRL there is not yet completed. But the Xiqu Centre should be completed in 2017, and you may start performances in 2018. What will be the impact on the operation of the centre if there is slippage on the part of the XRL station? Will you delay your opening date until the completion of the station? Secondly, to access the Xiqu Centre from the east, they have to use the subway to cross Canton Road from Victoria Towers, or they may cross the road at Austin Station or use the subway to access the centre. So the pedestrian subway is a leading path to the centre. But I'd like to know first who's going to manage the subway, and secondly, there is zero cultural feel there. So can you upgrade the subway so that it can prepare pedestrians for the Xiqu Centre? Can there be, say, murals or installations to enhance the artistic feel of the subway? We can have a motif of Cantonese opera or WKCD. Mr. Lynch?
In regard to the railway, you probably have more information today than we have today if you've met with them this morning. Clearly, from our point of view, the reason we embarked on Xiqu as the first building, it is significantly not impacted by the railway project, except for the mess in the streets around us. We expect that those developments will improve over the course of the next 2 years, and that should not have significant impact on the Xiqu project. Clearly, it does have an impact on the other projects, in particular the basement, the roads and the infrastructure, and I think that'll come up in further conversation. We do not control the subway across Canton Road, and from our point of view, we're not in a position to be exercising that degree of control. But I might ask Jeremy if he can make a comment in terms of both any of the specific detail in terms of the negotiations with the XRL.
Sure, thank you. I mean, we're working very closely with the MTRC team. We see them very regularly, every couple of weeks, and there are a number of interface issues that do exist. These are utilities, temporary road diversions, and really to date we're just working in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration, trying to ensure that there's no impact on either project. But obviously we know that the XRL project is under tremendous pressure itself, and certainly some of the solutions that we have to come up with can be a little bit complicated, but we're optimistic that particularly with utilities and road diversions, that solutions can be found.
Okay.
I'm so disappointed that you said that since this tunnel is not under your jurisdiction, there is nothing that you can do. I'm so disappointed about this remark, because at least I think you should initiate some discussions with the related department or the MTRC to see in what way we can improve the tunnel's decoration or improvement.
In those discussions, I guess what we need to do is to look at the specific issue you've raised. I thank you for your insight, and we will go and have a look at that and then see if there's anything that we can do to make it a more pleasurable experience over the next difficult few years while we're building the building and the XRL project is under construction.
OK， 好嚇，副主任唔該，第一輪。好啊，副主席。
我淨係想關於
Regarding the latest progress of the Xiqu Centre, I have questions on the last two paragraphs, paragraph 17 and 18. All right, according to paragraph 17 in 2015-16, the authority will conduct recruitment of the senior management positions of an artistic director and a general manager. I'd like to know whether these two are directly accountable to the board of the authority. Yes, the AD and the GM reports to me, and that is the Executive Director of Performing Arts. Because under the WKCDA, there are more than one performing venues. So coordination of these venues is my responsibility. I am the coordinator as the Executive Director of Performing Arts. Of course, under the WCDA, there is a consultancy or advisory committee to provide advice on the operation of the Xiqu Centre. Thank you. Mr. Louis Yu is the Executive Director of Performing Arts in WKCDA. All right, if the AD and GM are employed, Mr. Yu, as the Executive Director in Performing Arts, I'd like to know how much control he has. Because here you says that the AD will take charge of the artistic direction of the entire venue. So who has the final say? Mr. Yu as the Executive Director or this artistic director to be hired? Mr. Yu? The artistic director plays an important role in the artistic issues. So the AD will make artistic decisions, will have full say over decisions related to artistic matters. I, as the Executive Director of Performing Arts, have to map out the broad direction forward together with the AD for the Xiqu Centre and also coordination with other performing venues. I, together with other artistic directors, will determine the major direction of the WKCD. And as for the AD here, he has the expertise and professional and artistic expertise to make full decisions. Very specific question. If the AD would like to stage a certain performance, and yet the WKCDA or you as the Executive Director, can either of you interfere to the extent that the Artistic Director cannot run the center as he wishes? Well, you refer to the choice of programs. It is entirely the work of the AD. And AD we hire should be fully competent to make such decisions. So whether it be his senior in the management should interfere. So you will not directly interfere with his choice of programming, right? It is not required of me. Although I'm in this position, that doesn't mean that I am competent to make such programming decisions. It is the work of the AD. My position is to look at broad issues such as resource control and the overall artistic direction. When it comes to the choice of programs, it is the AD's work. So the AD has all the say, right? So he has absolute freedom in deciding the type or the programs or to be staged, the slots, so and so forth. Because this does matter. For instance, how much time is devoted to the established artists, how many to the rising artists. Can you really draw the line so clear?
The business plan and the decisions made by West Kowloon to allocate resources to each of the venues. So, he will be given as much tolerance as possible, but if he decides that he wants to spend $5 million on a production that has a budget of $2 million, then I assume that Lewis would intervene, or that the chief executive, or that the board would intervene, which is normal with any arts organisation anywhere.
Well, Mr. Lynch, I'm sure that you know where I come from. I have been pushing for arts accountability in this joint panel meeting for longer than I can remember. And you must know what I'm getting at.
或者答清楚啲咧，阿余生個 casting 嗰啲咧。
So what about casting and the time slots and the programs and how much time a certain troupe can take up? Is it your work or the AD's work? All decisions related, all artistic decisions will be made by the AD, but for resources, now the dates, the manpower and budget, all these are resources. It is not for the AD to decide on its own how these resources should be deployed. He will have to work with me and also the GM. So for artistic decisions, well, in the arts sector, it can be clearly delineated, but there are some things that have to be made jointly together with me. What about the choice of roles and the casting? Yes, it is the AD's decision.
Mr. Xiqu Kim, you have 4 minutes. The Permanent Secretary has referred to Yamate the theatre. What's the division of labor between the two? I understand that the Xiqu Centre will be nurturing young people or promoting Cantonese opera to young people. And of course, Xiqu Centre is not just about Cantonese opera. There are other operatic genres. Of course, you don't run the Yamate Theatre, but I would like to know whether you've got some agreement between yourself and the Yamate venue. Well, I'll say something and then I'll ask Mr. Yu to supplement. We know that Yamate is a revitalized historic building with 300 seats, but the Xiqu Centre is bigger, 1,100 seats. So Xiqu Centre can host bigger performances. And there will also be activities to promote understanding of Cantonese opera. The Yamate venue is runs on a partnership basis with Bartwall. They use it mainly for nurturing new talent. They have commissioned 6 or 7 veterans, Lo Ka-ying and so on, to train new people, to train new performers. And the Yamate Theatre gives them a venue to perform because the training would necessarily involve the chance to perform. But as for Xiqu, of course, they also want to train new talent. And the center itself is also a venue for people to appreciate Cantonese operas and other forms of Chinese opera. I'll ask Mr. Yu to supplement. Training is, of course, something that has to involve different parties. We also cooperate with Park War. We understand Park War is doing a lot to train new performers in Yamate. And Yamate provides a venue for these new upcoming stars. And there are about 100 trainees, so they give quite a lot of performances. In WKCD, we would be doing more along the line of elite training. Last year, we identified a dozen or so rising stars to provide them with a more in-depth or intensified training. We send them to the Beijing or Hangzhou for exchange, for training. We do not send out 100 people. It's just 5 or 10. So it's more the elitist in approach, if you may say, call it like that. The Xiqu Centre is going to be the prime venue for Chinese opera performances. Of course, we also provide training. And for Xiqu Centre, it's not just about Cantonese opera. We have Kunqu, Shanghainese opera, Sichuan opera. We have been in liaison with them. 2 years ago, in the Bamboo Theatre, we invited all these different performing troupes to give performance here in Hong Kong. We hope that all the famous and popular programs of different Chinese or operatic performing troupes will be able to be staged here. We are very happy with the current division of labor with Yamate. We were talking about the pedestrian subway at Canton Road. I understand that it's not within your jurisdiction, but who is responsible for that? Which government departments, or is it the MTRC? Paragraph 17 of the paper refers to the recruitment of the AD and the GM. In the atrium, there is an education center. There's a space of some 2,000 square meters. And of course, the Xiqu Centre is responsible for artistic education, I suppose. So will the AD be doing this, or are you going to recruit a dedicated staff for artistic education? I'll ask Mrs. Lee to respond to this question. I think Ms. Wall is talking about the subway basement. No, I'm talking about the subway linking up with Victoria Towers. Well, that's a government project. We're still looking at the internal design of our venues, so things can still be worked out. What about the subway straddling Canton Road? It's an existing one. It's an existing pedestrian subway, and not something that we need to do anything about in our projects. Well, I was saying that you should upgrade it because people will access your venue from Jordan Road and cross, and they will cross Canton Road using that subway. Well, we'll talk to the transport department over this. Artistic education, Mr. Yu, the AD, will be responsible for programming, audience building, and training of performers, including young performers. You mentioned the atrium, and on other floors, we may have space that we can use for artistic education. The AD will be responsible for some suitable arrangements to be made for such training and artistic education. Ms. Emily Lau. for the other venues, there are many performing companies who like to have have a resident status. They would like to have a venue to do the rehearsal and to give their performances. Have any of these performing companies approach you for granting them this access, this status, so that they can use the venues for training, for performances? Is there a similar need for the Xiqu Centre to come up with some arrangements with performing troops or companies? We are working on 3 venues. One of them is the Xiqu Centre, and then there's a Black Box Theatre, and the third one is an integrated venue for performance. A year before last, when deputations came to this council, they expressed their views for the allowing the residents. There will be a center for performing companies to be residents, especially for dancing companies. They may be allowed to use the venues on a long-term basis to train and to do the rehearsal and performances. But this is still being devised. At a later stage, we'll come back to brief members. And in the meantime, we'll continue to talk to the sectors to see whether their requests would be in line with our design. Are you going to allow the resident companies in some of the venues? What about the third one? Well, we are talking about the one next to M+, an integrated venue, which is being designed. The situation with different operatic companies is not quite the same. In the Xiqu Centre, we have 1 floor with classrooms or training facilities where they can be used for the training and rehearsal. So it's not like what we have for the 9 major performing companies in Hong Kong. We would like to do training, and we would not like we do not envisage that we are going to allow resident performing companies as such. I hope you consider the aspirations of the sector. They want to have a venue for performance, but also something for training. So you're not going to do this for Xiqu Centre. But what about the other one that you are planning, and which may come on stream 10 odd years later? Well, please talk to the sector to see if any one of them would like to become your resident companies. Well, last time when we came here to report, we said that in there's an integrated performing venues that we expect to commission in 2020. That's the third one. All right, we have exceeded our time. Do we have other members who would like to speak? Mr. Tony Chair? I want to follow up a point raised by Dr. Helena Wong. That is the design of the pedestrian subway. A year or so ago, we talked about accessibility, and we talked about using footbridges or subways to link up WKCD with the neighboring areas. I remember at that time we stressed that the design should showcase the artistic themes of this cultural district. And then a moment ago, the government said it could be discussed. It seems that what we mentioned was not really seriously taken on board. We know in the Central District, we failed to incorporate certain designs for the conversion of the Western market, and then later on it was almost impossible to do anything more. Or whichever departments might be involved, if you do not ask for specific features, they will just build a subway with the most basic functionality. And you must have an integrated theme. You must give people the feel that they are going to enter a cultural district or a Xiqu Centre. So it's not just about talking about it or having a discussion, although I know that this is outside WKCD. I don't think that government or departments should adopt such a piecemeal approach. We're not talking about doing something for WKCD. Otherwise, we end up with something rather unpleasant. Mrs. Feng, I think Dr. Wong was asking questions about an existing pedestrian subway, which is under the Transport Department. If we want to beautify it, if we want to improve it, we will have to talk to the department concerned. As for other accessibility facilities, such as footbridges, that we are going to build for WKCD, yes, we are going to incorporate special designs so that they are compatible. They blend in with the WKCD. For example, there's one linking up with elements, the shopping mall elements. We adopt special design, and we will be briefing members later. So we have to differentiate new projects and WKCD projects on the one hand, and other facilities that have been around for years. For those existing facilities, we need to talk to the relevant management departments to seek improvement. Of course, we agree that if improvements are possible, we should do them.
Well, I don't know how many subways are being or connections are being designed and yet to be constructed. So please relay our concerns. Yes, I agree with you. Mrs. Feng, regarding the subway below Austin Road, it is newly constructed, but it doesn't belong to the WKCD. Probably it's the government's. So can you design it so that it can echo the ambience of Xiqu Centre? Because it is the facility being constructed. And as for the one under Canton Road, although it is already completed, I think it is the HAB's role, right? Please discuss with the relevant departments because it is public art. So that you can turn this very boring subway into something interesting. Well, in many cities with a similar cultural arts area, well, even the nearby railway stations or MTR stations are designed to fit in with the ambience. I think if we can design it well, I think it may even boost the revenue for the station. Okay, thank you. M+. Updates on the development of M+. Anyone from the administration? I'll give an introduction, Chairman. On 23rd of July last year, at the meeting, WKCDA briefed members on the development of M+ and its progress. Together with WKCDA, would like to report to the Joint Subcommittee latest development of M+. In last August, we started the foundation works, and in March, the authority called tenders for the superstructure. We hope that we can start its construction the latest at the end of this year. However, it has to be done in tandem with the basement down. So we will have an item later in this meeting to secure members' support so that we can have funding for constructing the integrated basement below 3A, 3B. If we have LegCo's approval, we can start the superstructure works and also the integrated basement later this year for completion in 2018. As for collection and acquisition, we have made major progress and received some donations. The WKCDA will brief you on the details later. We have over 4,000 pieces of works, and they've also completed the first review of the acquisition policy, and the relevant policy can be seen on the webpage of WCDA. As for the governance structure, members may recall that last year the authority proposed to set up a wholly owned company called the M+ Company Limited, so that the status of M+ could be made clear and it can maintain its autonomy and independence. This will ensure that we have a professional team with the right expertise to monitor the operation of M+. The authority will provide this new company with the necessary resources, will also vet its business plans and accounts. The authority will maintain overall control and financially and operationally of the new company, and the company will be responsible for professional matters such as acquisition of collection. M+ is subject to the regulation of the subcommittee. I'll give the floor to Dr. Lee, Dr. Nitvet.
Before I introduce Dr. Nitvet to do the presentation, I think at the last meeting and the meeting before, we've talked about the implications of the integrated basement and the public infrastructure works for the M+ project, and at the last meeting we indicated that we are on track to grant the contract for the superstructure of M+ by early September. Clearly, from our point of view, this is probably the most critical decision for the organisation going forward. We indicated a quantum of some $25 million per month delay if those decisions aren't made, and clearly significant ramifications for the future timeline in delivery of the museum and the opening of the museum, and a range of complications around that. And I think it's just important that the members of the committee are aware of that issue as we head into a more detailed discussion on the development of the design and the range of other associated issues. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chairman. So today we are going to focus on three issues. One is about the construction of the building, the collection, and on the governance that has been touched upon before also. So updates on capacity building, audience building and stakeholder engagement is meant to happen in the coming joint subcommittee meeting, just for clarity. Of course, I would have been delighted to talk about the success of the Hong Kong participation in the Venice Biennial, which you may have read about in the newspapers, but I'll save that for next time. When we talk about the building, it's actually the M+ building project is really on track. The design, the 100% design was completed on schedule. The foundation works started also on schedule in August last year, and we are now tendering for the main contract for the superstructure, and construction of the main superstructure is planned to commence in September, October this year, with the aim of a completion in 3.5 years from now, in the end of 2018. And as Mr. Lynch just pointed out, of course, the work program is subject to the funding approval for the related infrastructure works in the integrated basement. So I don't have to comment more on that. Just a few points around the building and also some images. I'd love to spend half an hour to take you through the entire building, but time doesn't permit. This is the construction site now, without a helicopter or a drone, as we say these days now, small. But it's a site which is in full action. I see it from my window, and its construction or basement foundation work is really going on, which is very exciting, and that means also that we work against timetables that are set by construction managers, which actually makes me more comfortable. This is what we hope to have in standing there in 3.5 years from now on the waterfront. And just to take you very, very briefly through the building, it has really 5 components. It has what is called the found space, which is really the space that the architects sort of excavated around the Airport Express tunnel, and which gives us a very, very unique space deep down in the museum space. And I'll show an image of that. There's a platform, which is the main sort of plaza where people come into the museum, even though there are many entrances, and you get access to most of the functions. The podium, which houses most of the exhibition spaces, the tower, which has multiple functions, and the CSF, which stands for the Conservation and Storage Facility. So it's where we store the collection, that's where the conservation studios are. This is an image from that found space I mentioned, and to the right, you members can see basically the structure of the Airport Express tunnel, which gives a very unique diagonal structure that cuts through the building and creates like a huge staircase, which is great for display of works of art. This is an image from Artist Square, which is where you, for example, if you come in what I hope will be a beautiful footbridge from Elements, you land on Artist Square, and you have then access through the main entrance into M+ here. Of course, there is an entrance from the waterfront promenade and from other angles as well. When you come in, it sort of looks like this, but of course the architects haven't put in the works of art and also what we hope will be big advertisements for the ongoing exhibitions and so forth. So I think it will be a much livelier place and more colorful place than it looks on the architects' renderings. But this is really the place where, if you've entered here to the right, you have the first big space for temporary exhibitions, blockbuster exhibitions. To the left, you would have seen the shop, the museum shop. To the right, you have the learning center where all the sort of family education and adult education and all of that will go on in a fantastic 2-story space. And here you have access to a fantastic auditorium that I'll soon show some images of as well. But first I'll show the same space from another angle, also indicating how you always, wherever you are, can understand where you are in this very, very large building. We're talking about a building, for me that's a familiar measure, twice the size of Tate Modern. So it's a very big museum we're building. And you can look down and you can look up, and you can always understand where you are in the building and what's going on in different parts of it. I mentioned the big auditorium. It can be a place where you just can sit down and rest and relax and look out towards the waterfront, or it can be a space where you can watch cinema, movies, performances, and so forth as well. It's a fantastic space. One floor up, you have the main plaza, which takes you to the different exhibition spaces, the galleries. And finally, an image of one of the galleries. This is one of the skylit galleries, which just gives a character. There are multiple galleries with very different character and style, some of them specifically built and designed for ink art and for the Chinese art tradition and more Asian type objects with more sensitive materials like silk, paper and so forth as well. And finally, one step up again, you have the big roof terrace with low planting, which provides access and views out towards the fantastic view over Victoria Harbour and Central on Hong Kong Island. So that's the building project. It seems to be on track. We, of course, wait for the result of the tender process of the big contract. And we are, of course, very keen to see what happens with the public infrastructure works. That's critical for us. Moving on to the next section, we have the collection and acquisitions, which is, of course, really the core. I mean, we're very keen to say that a museum shouldn't be confused with a building. Rather, if it's confused with anything, it should be with the collection. That's the core of the museum, of any museum. That's the content, that's the spine. And just to report a little bit on figures, as members may remember, because it's been debated a few times in this chamber, we received 3 years ago a big donation from Dr. Uli Sig of about 1,500 works by Chinese contemporary artists. Since then, we have continued, of course, to acquire, and we have acquired about 2,500 works, out of which, because this is also a question that often comes up, about 50% are produced by Hong Kong artists and designers and architects, which means that if you look at the total collection, including the SIG donation, everything, we have a bit over 4,000 works, out of which about a third are by Hong Kong artists, designers and architects. So if you have a pie chart, it looks like this at the present. Now, I think it's really important to also remind members that we have been working on building the collection for less than 2.5 years. We have 4.5 years until we open the museum to the public, and hopefully about 100 years plus to continue to build the collection also. So it's really early days, and this is a snapshot. This is not what it's going to be when we open. So proportions will change, will shift when we expand our scope. But I think that this is not so badly balanced if you look at what we are asked to do and what this museum is meant to be. Just a few images in the afternoon here of some works that have been added to the collection in the last year or so by Hong Kong artists, designers and architects. A group out of actually several groups of works that were donated to us by Wilson Shi. Of course, a very important mid-career artist in Hong Kong. 1 out of 5 major acquisitions by Paul Chan. Paul Chan, I can mention, is one of the most talked about and I think I would say famous contemporary artists in his generation, born 73, born in Hong Kong, but grew up mainly in the US. But he's a Hong Kong boy still, and it's fantastic to be able to have some of the key works of this great artist. Of course, the ink art tradition is very important for us, and the dialogue between different art traditions. And here are 2 examples. Liu Xiquan's Zen painting from 71, one out of a relatively large group of Liu Xiquan works we've acquired, and the same with Movement 2 by Irene Chow, also an example of a number of works we have acquired by her to sort of to indicate that part. Younger Hong Kong artist Jerry Kwan, Liu Shunkwong, of course, was very influential also as a teacher. 2 artists like, for example, Sarat Se and Lee Kit. So just some examples of what we have acquired, how it's growing, while at the same time, of course, popular culture and the wider culture is important. And here's one example coming out of our big project last summer about neon signs. The Mahjong Kai Ki Mahjong Entertainment neon sign, as it's called, which is a masterpiece in its field. And then, of course, the old Peak Tower, the model of the old Peak Tower, which is a marvelous building inspired by traditional Chinese architecture. Unfortunately, it came down after a relatively short time in place, actually. So that's my comments about the collection. And finally, moving into the governance structure, which we mentioned in July last year. This is, of course, something that goes back to 2006 and the Museum Advisory Group and the Consultative Committee's report in 2008 and the need of a specific governance for a museum. And the 5 years, more or less, I've been involved in M+, it's been on the agenda, and I hope this is the final chapter of that. The reason why it's always been seen as important to have a separate governance model for the museum is, of course, that, well, to put it very simply to start with, in a few years' time, this will be an institution with hundreds of employees. And it's a little bit odd if it sits next to the HR department and finance department within West Kowloon Cultural District Authority in terms of its internal workings. But maybe to the outside world, it's more important that it gives also a clear identity and accountability, of course. You know who's the director, who are the ones who take the decisions, where do the decision makers sit? Well, they sit in the M+ board in this case when it comes to museum-related matters. So you know who to blame and who to praise, basically. And this is a way to build public trust, ultimately, also, because people can build up a long relationship with an institution if it has a face that is visible and has a clear identity. I think the other part is also that our partners, whether it's artists, donors, other institutions overseas, they can sometimes find it a little bit strange that they think they write a contract with M+ about a collaboration or a donation, but as a matter of fact, on the papers it says West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. So I think that sort of compatibility and clarity is important as well. Of course, also in this case, we will have now a board which will be responsible for decisions in museum-related matters. Please note, museum-related or museological matters, which of course will be composed in a different way than the present West Kowloon board, which means that you will get decision makers with expertise in the field. And I think that's good for the decision making. That's sort of self-evident in a way. In July last year, there were concerns raised about this when we mentioned that the board have taken this decision. And now I can clarify a little bit how the implementation will work out and how the oversight works. Of course, the board decided to set up a company limited by a guarantee. That's, in principle, legally something that is quite similar to a trust, but it puts less pressure on the board members, so to say, on the trustees. But it's not a commercial company, so not to be confused with that. It is just a vehicle which will be wholly owned, fully owned by the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. And the structure is like that. So the M+ board will then report to the West Kowloon board. The director of M+, at the present, that's me, I will report to the M+ board, but also to the CEO of West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. And one can imagine that when it comes to things that have any type of impact on the whole, that's the important reporting line. When it's more museological matter, the M+ board is the more important reporting line. But it's a double reporting line. And the oversight, of course, the key thing is that the West Kowloon board decides on the business plan, the corporate plan, so they determine the the budget, which is, of course, the ultimate control of what you do, what you can do and what you can't do. Also, all existing functions, let's say, and directives is also led by and follow the West Kowloon principles. So anything having to do with human resources, finance, legal, communications and so forth is aligned with West Kowloon. So there are no major changes there. And of course, when it comes to LegCo, there won't be a change either. So the director of M+ Limited, in this case, will come, just like I do today, to come to LegCo in the same capacity and report about the progress of M+. So I think that's basically the gist of it. Thank you very much, Chairman, and I'm very happy to answer questions if I can.
我諗咧就因為我哋時間都有啲 overrun 咧。
We have overrun a bit, so we have to manage time well. We have Mr. Ip Kok Hin, Dr. N. Zhang, and a number of other members, Deputy Chairman, and Ms. Mo first. 4 minutes for each member. Please ask short questions. Ip Kok Hin, I think Ms. Mo should ask first. Okay, Ms. Mo.
A misunderstanding. I thought you were going to talk about costs at this session as well, but never mind. It will come up later.
我諗冇對話啊嘛，東得啦。
Okay, so yes, Mr. Chairman, yes, the fact that you are setting up an M+ Limited, your own separate, independent governing body, right? You talked about transparency, accountability, and all that. Could you assure the Hong Kong public just one more time that it wouldn't slip into bureaucracy instead? Because you were talking about layers of authority there just now. You showed the slide. That's my question number one. You tell Hong Kong people that we could rest assured that yours wouldn't become a little power clique, your own little kingdom, empire, that sort of things, right? So question number one. Question number two, I remember you gave a very clear-cut, positive reply to my question previously, that you would have no hesitation whatsoever to use any politically sensitive, if not actually incorrect, exhibits like works by contemporary artists such as Ai Weiwei. But how could you be so quite so confident about that when political censorship is all about politics, and politics could be tangible, could be intangible, I don't know. And M+ will, once built, will forever be there. But people wouldn't. How could you make that kind of assurance? What I'm trying to say is M+ is, well, the engineering works and things are going to be very expensive, astronomical, but none of your fault, I know. The thing is, we don't mind probably paying a lot for Asia's Tate Modern, if that's what's going to become, right? But if it's not going to become Asia's finest museum after all, then that's not worth it. So could you give us this no political censorship guarantee again? 2 questions. Thank you.
好，邊個答 ？Lash?
Who would take this question?
I guess it's my questions, both of them. On the kingdom side, I think that what we're trying to create is really something that is more transparent, clearer. Who takes the decisions and who can you then also hold accountable? So I think that there's always a bigger risk for kingdoms if decision-making is hidden in structures and so forth. I personally, of course, come from working in environments where we've had less bureaucracy than I experience in Hong Kong. So I do everything, and I've done everything the last 5 years to decrease that, not to increase it. And this is part of that, I would say. So I can assure you of that. When it comes to the politically sensitive issue, I've had this question almost every time I've been in LegCo from different members. And of course, I can only guarantee my own position, and I think I can speak for the present curatorial team, that our view is, and that sort of goes through everything we do in our work, is that artistic freedom and freedom of speech and expression is absolutely central to a successful cultural institution, whether it's a museum, a theatre, or anything. There's no doubt about that. And if that freedom would come under threat, and we act accordingly, if that freedom would come under threat, I think that we will take our own, I mean, it's our own responsible reaction to act according to our beliefs. And I think I've said that before, that I would, if I don't manage to sort of convince those who put this pressure, and I haven't seen any such pressure yet, and I don't expect it. If I can't convince them, of course, it's not for me to do this job. And I think this is quite straightforward and easy. But I must also say that so far we haven't seen anything that have threatened our decision-making and our artistic freedom. And that means that we can also give Hong Kong people a collection that is very rich, diverse, and unafraid. If I put it that way.
Okay, that's all. Wang Big
Dr. Helena Wong, Mr. Yip Kwok Him. Thank you, Chairman. I have two questions. One is about the company, M+ Limited. Under this plan, you are going to set up a new vehicle. This limited company will be running M+ in the future. What about ownership, control? What's the relationship between this limited company and the authority? Is the limited company a subsidiary, or are they two separate entities? The members would be appointed by the authority, but then the limited company would be running as a limited company in accordance with the company's ordinance. The museum will be built with a huge investment of public funds. And then we'll also be funding the operation. So we have to be clear about the relationship between different entities and the future arrangement. Turning to collections, you've already got some 4,000 pieces, items, and it's mentioned in paragraph 8 that you have received donations of all forms to the tune of $1.35 billion, and you have to acquire more. So for acquisition, what's the budget that you have provided so that you can build up your collections? And in the course of acquisition, how are you going to showcase freedom, artistic freedom? I don't want to see freedom stifled. On the other hand, I don't want you to be restricted in the acquisition policy, that you are going to go for certain forms of artistic expression. We want the audience to have a wide choice.
To start with the limited company, I mean, I think it's important to underline that it is a wholly owned subsidiary of West Kowloon Cultural District Authority, and that means that, of course, the company ordinance, the whole setup, and the ownership of the company is just like a daughter company of a corporation, you can say, with the exception that we're not a profit driving, of course, company. It's more functions like a trust. So I would say that one can say that West Kowloon maintains control over all aspects of it, besides the decision-making about museological matters, which, of course, where decisions are taken by a board that in its turn, of course, also is chosen by the West Kowloon board. So I think it's a good example on, what shall I say, getting quite close to international best practice. How museums around the world, let's say Tate as an example, is set up, where it's publicly funded, there is a clear mandate, clear control lines, clear policies, but also an arm's length distance, so that you can guarantee a reasonable amount of artistic freedom. So that's that. Going to the acquisition budget, the budget that was allocated in the CC case in 2008 was earmarked for acquisitions was 1 billion Hong Kong dollars, out of which we've spent roughly a third on acquisitions by buying art. At the same time, as you point out, we have actually received donations of 1.35 billion Hong Kong dollars. So we have a very strong support from the arts community, especially in Hong Kong, where we have 56 donors out of, I would say, roughly 50 come from Hong Kong, mainly artists, but also collectors and so forth, who have supported our activities. The way forward is it's a long journey. And we work with a lot of research and a lot of roadmaps to sort of build this collection. And the good thing is that the public can follow what happens in the collection by going to our website and see the new works that are being acquired and then that come online also. So it's a very transparent process. And we do public forums and other public presentations on a regular basis to explain really how we're working to do this, because it is something that we do for the people of Hong Kong. And, of course, the people of Hong Kong will have to live with the result for a long time. So it's very important that they understand it. Thank you.
OK，下一位黃碧雲。
主席，我最關心係
Next. Chairman, I'm quite concerned about the positioning of the collection. I want M+ to be faithful is positioning. First, it is a place to showcase Hong Kong people's visual arts, to be followed by China and then Asia. While this is the current composition of collection, well, 32% is from Hong Kong, but 42% from mainland China, and then the rest from other countries. As last said, this is the current composition. Come 2018, when M+ is really opened, I'd like to know the relative percentage of works from Hong Kong. I'd like to know whether the percentage will be increased. This is my first question, which I think is important. And secondly, the fiscal or financial transparency, I would like to see that, because we are spending a lot of public money to buy these works. What have we purchased and how much money have we spent in the market to buy them? I think all this should be made known to the public so that we know where has the money gone and whether it is well spent. And the last point, on the building itself, I hope you will not use a reflective glass as the facade, because ICC is using a reflective material, and there are a lot of complaints from around Kowloon Station. When you drive on Route 3, you can feel the glare from ICC. M+ is such a beautiful building. I don't want it to be a subject of complaint. Please do not use reflective glass as the material for its facade. This will also make the environment very hot. All right?
I mean, on the percentage, I think that Of course, this is a snapshot, and it is actually, the picture is distorted by the fact that we, of course, luckily enough, it was, a world news, but we were given this fantastic donation as a starting point. So we started with 1,500 non-Hong Kong works. I think it's also important to remember that we already have the Hong Kong Museum of Art, the Heritage Museum, the History Museum, that tell the story of Hong Kong. And the task I was given once upon a time, 5 years ago now, was really to create the museum that Asia doesn't have. And what that meant was really a counterpoint to the great museums in Europe and America, Museum of Modern Art, Tate Modern, Centre Pompidou, and try to tell the story of the last 70 years in art, design, architecture and film, in our case, but from a Hong Kong perspective, not from London or Paris or New York, but from Hong Kong, China, Asia perspective. And that means that we inscribe Hong Kong art into a global history. And of course, there is a balance that has to be striken. I think that what is important is that when you come to the museum, you always feel that I'm in Hong Kong. This is, just like you feel if you go to Centre Pompidou in Paris, you never doubt you're in Paris when you look at that collection. And the same thing would be true here, but also that you're in China, that you're in East Asia, Asia, and in the world. And exactly in terms of numbers, it's hard to say, because you can have a really large work which is 2,000 square meters, so you can have a tiny little work which is one number as well. So numbers may not be the right way to describe it. I think ultimately it's about a vision and how we reach that. And I think this is something that the acquisition committee, the museum committee as it is now, who really are the ones who approve the acquisitions, are sort of all working towards that goal. Finally, reflective windows. Yes, Jeremy Stowe.
Mr. Stowe.
Thank you. Just to respond to the member's question on the facade, it's quite a different system to the ICC building, and we actually have a lot of precast concrete elements. If maybe you can go to the image. So yes, we have a lot of precast concrete elements. So when you actually look directly at the building, it won't be a sort of reflective glass facade like you see on the ICC building. And we're hoping this is a very simple system that can be constructed in China, for example. You can see there, you see a lot of the lines are the precast concrete elements. The glass sits behind it, so there'll actually be a fair bit of shadow onto the glass behind. So we see a very different response to how ICC looks.
So you're not going to use some reflective material, either glass or steel or whatever?
We do have glass behind, but there's a projecting precast facade system. So, looking at the building, you will see more of the precast concrete elements which have a tile system on, as opposed to, sheet glass, which you see on ICC.
Okay, thank you. 下一位盧偉國。
多謝主席，就簡單一個。
I'd like to declare interest. I'm a member of the board of WKCDA. The acquisition policy of M+ is very clear. I don't think we have to be too strict. And for contemporary arts, I think the mainland has a certain role, and they are progressing very quickly. Many contemporary arts from China are very popular in the world. Of course, local artists are also very outstanding. So I think our positioning is clear enough. And of course, I will be happy to see more outstanding local work showcase here. I hope they can make their way into our acquisition, because it is a major encouragement to local artists.
and we have also got some very good artwork acquired by M+ already. But I won't be too worried about the actual quantity. I believe outstanding local artworks would certainly take up a large proportion of the acquisition. As a member of the WKCDA, I, of course, in the council, I wear a different hat, and I will monitor the development of M+. I hope that we can use the WKCD to showcase Hong Kong's creativity, and it's an excellent thing that we have that opportunity. I'm concerned about the remaining projects of WKCD. We have an item coming up soon. I hope the integrated basement can start works as soon as possible. I have no more comments. Thank you. All right, Ms. Emily Lau.
I like the design of the building. I went to Tai Kwu Shing to look at it. And so things as they stand right now, where do you think it would rank internationally if we have such a museum? And I like it. It's a good landmark standing next to our harbor, not like the Cultural Centre, which should really disappear into the bottom of the harbor. So where do you think it would stand? Because Dr. Nivi just referred to other similar museums in Europe and elsewhere. So if we have such a structure and with the collections, and we hope we will acquire more, but what kind of reputation do you think it will have?
Mr. Lastly.
What we've set out to do, and I think so far we've managed to sort of stick to that also and not compromise anything, is really to give Asia a museum of the type of standing as the museums I mentioned, the Museum of Modern Art, Centre Pompidou, Tate Modern, for example, which were also mentioned actually when I was hired as the sort of goals. And the building, I would say, I feel absolutely confident. I mean, this has been a fantastic design process with the architects. The building, I think I dare say that, and I've worked in many museum buildings. I'm an old man now and done it for a long time. This is probably the best museum for modern and contemporary art and design that has been built. And it's a really phenomenal building. Then it's to us to fill it with good content also. And we have a great team, so we have a chance, I think, to really put together a good collection. And of course, collections you don't create them in 9 years or 7 years. Most collections are built over many, many decades. So it's a maturing process, of course. And we have to complement that with really good exhibitions and good education programs. But so far, I think we have a chance to do something that is absolutely outstanding. 1 out of 5 in the world, if you want to figure. That's the ambition.
Well, I hope you're right. And I don't know whether you will be around when it opens. If not, we will invite you back. If it doesn't measure up, there's going to be hell to pay.
Yeah. I mean, I say this against the background of having been the first director of Tate Modern and created that. And I can say that I mean, of course, that was built on the back of a museum that's 100 years old. But we have fantastic possibilities here. And actually to do something that is a game changer, because this has not been done in Asia before, anything on this ambition level when it comes to contemporary culture. So I think so far, so good. We have another 4.5 years to go until we open to the public. And of course, we need to stay on track.
What about in mainland China? Do they have anything similar or even better than us?
At the present, not. And I do think that we have an advantage here because we have a history of governance, we have a history of museums in this field, and of course we have freedom of expression, which means that we can be another type of museum. But also, we are really ahead, and we have a window of opportunity to create something here. They're catching up. As we know.
Ms. Chen Yun Han, I want to ask a question about the company. And we have been given a paper by the WKCDA, M+ will set up an independent company. I have questions about that. This is a museum for visual art, and we are talking about large sums of money. For example, we use $1.077 billion to buy the Xiqu collection. So I'm concerned whether the company will affect the acquisition direction or policy. And also, I have some questions about the function as a trust. Is this a trust about acquisition or about financial management? And who are going to be those people working for the trust? Are they all WKCDA people? We need documents to set out the facts. And also, what's the relationship between this company with the board? I think the HAB should tell us what are you going to say if people have questions?
Last stop.
Chen
I
Yun.
wish to invite Mrs. Fong to reply first. Mrs. Fong.
Sorry.
多謝。當然啦，就我哋。
Well, we are represented on the board of WKCDA and also on the museum board. So we are there to witness the whole process. The idea of setting up a limited company was raised last year. The WKCDA has worked hard on this idea. They are drafting some legal papers on the trust, on the acquisition trust, setting out the terms of reference and also the relationship between the company and the WKCDA. So there are three parties. They are trustees. They are the M+ board and also WKCDA. There are going to be three sets of different people. Then it's not going to be having the same groups of people sitting on all three. Of course, there may be some overlapping. We haven't got the appointees, yes, but there will be some check and balance among the three. And as Dr. Navid said, when the collections will be owned by the WKCDA, but we would like to set up a company to manage such a valuable collections. Mr. Lynch may wish to supplement.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Fung. I just wanted to correct a comment that you made, Chen Yun Han, in regard to the value of the Xiqu collection, and I think it's important to be on the record in LegCo. The cost of the Xiqu collection from the acquisition budget was 177 million, not 1.7 billion. And I think it's really important that that's understood. The value of the Xiqu collection is 1.3 billion Hong Kong dollars, but we only paid 177 million. I think Lars may want to make some further comments in regard to the second part of the comment.
Actually, as a matter of fact, I don't think I have more comments. Thank you.
Okay. 好，多謝。下一位副主席。
Deputy Chairman. We have high expectations of M+. We hope M+ can create a new culture and bring in new ideas and also put Hong Kong on the global map of museums. We want Hong Kong to be a prominent player. That's why for 3 terms in this council, we have set up a joint committee to monitor the project. I have a question for Dr. Nivid. As I asked Mr. Yu in respect of the Xiqu Centre, I'm talking about artistic accountability for any cultural venue, be it the Xiqu Centre or M+, or the Visual Arts Centre. This is important because if you don't have autonomy, if you don't have an artistic accountability system in place, the public or the world will find it difficult to have confidence in you. So I have a question for the Executive Director, Dr. Nivid, that I would like to seek an undertaking and from you that the acquisition policy of the future M+ will be such that although you have to work within a budget allocated to you, whatever you want to acquire or whatever you want to add to your collections, the future executive director or you would have the power to act with a wide degree of freedom. And also, I want to say this for our record. If we want M+ to bring in new ideas, to be a pioneer of new culture, then we have to leverage on our unique geographical and cultural background and our historical legacy. In that, Hong Kong is an important window for China, and we enjoy a geographical advantage. Many people come to Hong Kong first before they enter the mainland. And also Hong Kong is a place where East meets West culturally and otherwise. And we have a history of more than 100 years under such historical background. So how can you really create a unique M+ for us so that we can actually be exploring new horizons?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, accountability, yes, I think that artistic accountability is absolutely critical to the success of any cultural institution, actually, because that's how you can build a trust, a long-term trust with the public, especially also have the public not just go to the blockbuster exhibitions and the big names, but trust the institution and therefore also go and discover new things because they trust the institution. So I think that's absolutely fundamental. In terms of the director of the museum director's decision-making power, of course it also has to be within limits in terms of when it comes to financial matters, for example. So if we look at acquisitions, as was mentioned as an example, the way it works is that I and the curatorial team, which is now quite substantial and diverse, we make proposals, or there are proposals made. Some of these acquisitions I make. I can take decisions up to a certain level, relatively low. The next level goes to the acquisition committee, or interim acquisition committee as it's called at the present, which takes a certain amount of decisions. And then if it gets over a certain financial level in terms of acquisitions, it goes up to the next level. And that is a control mechanism. But the proposals always come from within the museum and the curatorial team and the expertise there. And then it's being debated, discussed, tested against, of course, whether the price might be right or not, and whether it fits within the argument as to why it fits within the collection, in the narratives we're building, and so forth. So, and I think that follows the model that is common in the world as best practice, even though there are variations within it. So I think that we can say that with the new governance model, where also other museum-related decisions sit with a specialized museum board, I think that we will have a governance and an accountability system that is in line with best practice, international best practice.
OK， 唔該晒。蔣麗芸。
唔該啊，主席，唔好意思，因為我
Dr. N. Jiang, sorry I had to attend another meeting next door. I just want to confirm one thing, that about the superstructure, the building on the above the podium. There are a dozen or so floors. Are they all for exhibitions of exhibits, artistic exhibits, or are they going to use just the lower floors?
Podium in the what we call the tower, so to say, about the roof terrace, as it were. First floor is actually a cafe and well, basically cafe connected to the roof terrace. Then we have a couple of floors which is library and archive, so that's for semi-public. On top of that, there is a number of floors which is called curatorial center. That's where basically the curatorial team and the staff works. Then there is a planned to be a members' room for members of the museum, patrons of the museum, and those who are engaged in the museum. The top three floors are dedicated to as RDE, basically restaurants, which will be part of course, of the funding model of the whole West Kowloon, and the income from that will go into the West Kowloon budget. And in between, there are two floors dedicated to what is called OACF, other arts and cultural facilities, which can be it can be an arts foundation, it can be something less commercial but arts related that fits into a museum. So you can say that some of the tower is public, some of it is back of house, and some of it are restaurants and RD which will generate income. Okay? Is that
OK
And as you know, the Environment Bureau has stated that they want to work on emission reduction. They attach importance to emission reductions, especially emissions resulting from buildings. And they have a grand government policy on this. We're seeing this bulky buildings, and that's why I'm concerned, because the energy consumption is going to be significant. So I would like to know specifically whether for your buildings, are you going to incorporate the emission reduction features or energy conservation measures? Is it going to be fully air conditioned for the entire tower or building?
Yes, to respond to your member's question, the building is aiming to achieve the BEAM Gold rating, and the BEAM Gold rating means that a number of things are done to the building, you know, with electrical things a little bit similar to this building. When you walk into a room, the lights go on. But right across, you know, all the electrical and mechanical and cabling would adhere to the BEAM Gold rating standard for a building, which is quite difficult to achieve, but that is our goal and that's our aim to achieve.
主席啊，
all right, Chairman. Now, given that this is such a big building, and I don't think there would be much revenue from this building unless you are using 1 or 2 floors for food and beverage. So because it is at the waterfront, then should we ask the WKCDA to exchange views with our officers from the Environment Bureau to enhance environment protection features? Because the Secretary for the Environment said that he very much want to discuss with developers of new developments. So we take the initiative to exchange views with the Environment Bureau.
A couple of quick comments. Ms. Chan, you would understand that the 3 concepts on which this whole project was developed was that it would be sustainable, accessible and connected. And clearly, we've had discussions with all areas of government, including the Environmental Bureau. The aspirations in all of the buildings are to the higher standards that we hope can be achieved, and clearly that will distinguish them from many other buildings in Hong Kong. We clearly hope that there are still a range of initiatives in terms of the public infrastructure works and the idea of putting the integrated basement below the ground so that there are no cars. We will be probably the only part of Hong Kong that complies with the new proposed Environmental Bureau standards, because we won't have any cars above the ground. And clearly that is a very important part of moving the project forward. I think the members of the subcommittee need to recognise that environmental initiatives cost money, and until sort of some of the money starts to flow, that's a continuing constraint on the development of the first parts of West Kowloon, but the future parts. So we're hopeful that that's recognised in time to be able to allow us to maximise the environmental benefits of the individual buildings, the park, the public space. Thank you.
OK， 咁我最後咧，我就想問一問咧，就呢幅圖啊，我想問下。
One last question on the plan. I'd like to know where the company is to be. Where is the company? Is it under the board of the authority, or is it under the CEO, under the artistic director? Can you clarify the relative position and responsibility? The company itself
is run by a board, the M+ board. So the company is actually the yellow entity on that map in terms of a structure, as the purple one is the West Kowloon board. It presents upwards to the West Kowloon board in terms of the business plan. The West Kowloon board allocates resources to it, and clearly there's a very clear set of delegations of authority in terms of what we're talking about.
So is it going to replace the box, or within that box, Mrs. Feng? Chairman, I think you are asking about the staff. No, where is the company? Where can I see the company? Well, each company has its board, and the board is the highest body responsible. How is it related to the M+ board? Well, M+ board is the board of M+ Company Limited. All staff of M+ have to be answerable to the board. Okay, so the board is the head of that company. The M+ director is the head. Can you tell us why you need a company? Or not like the Xiqu Centre, you have an artistic director. For many museums run by LCSD, they have a chief curator or planner, developer, and then they can form a team to manage the collection and for operation of the museum. So why have you decided to set up a company instead of having a curator or chief director to do it? I think in Dr. Nivet's explanation, I think he already explained why it is good to have this M+ company. This is important for the positioning of M+. Now, for LCSD, we run a few museums. In the past, we had
chief curator, but now we have changed the name to museum director, because when they liaise with other organizations, if they call themselves a chief curator of a museum, people will query what is the relationship between this curator and the museum, because we need to let outsiders know this person represents this museum. Given that M+ has such a big collection and of such value, we have to ensure that other museums know whom they are dealing with. If someone says that he is just someone in charge of a department under the WKCD board, then you can just employ an M+ chief curator, a chief curator for M+, that will do. Dr. Las is already the executive director. But why don't you corporatize museums of LCSD? Well, in 2010, we decided against corporatization of LCSD museums. Of course, if we decided to go along that route, we had the problem of fixing the positioning. But then our museums are the LCSD, so we don't have to consider that. Our second round, Dr. Na Wong and Chen Yuen-Han in one more, and Deputy Chairman, 2 minutes each. Questions and answers, so can answers be more succinct. Dr. Hannah Chen, or rather, Madam Chen Yuen-Han. Thank you. I'd like to say this to Mrs. Feng. You just told us that you've taken into account manpower or the board membership, and there should be no overlapping of these 3 boards. But if there is no overlapping of membership, then administratively speaking, there may be difficulties. But if there is too much overlapping, then what? You say that there can be no overlap. There should be some overlapping, but not too much. Now, if someone is on the WKCD board and is chairman of the M+ board and M+ board committees, he may be the deputy chairman. So what will be the view of an outsider? You were too abstract when you answer that question. Can you be more specific? You may say that, Chen Yuen-Han, you don't have to worry too much because this is a common phenomenon among many companies, but still I want you to clarify the situation a little bit. Thank you, Madam Chen Yuen-Han, for your question. As regards members to be appointed to the M+ board, the board of M+ Company Limited, we haven't come to a decision yet. But all board members should be interested in arts and culture and have knowledge in museum collection. Well, let me quote an example. When collectors become board members of M+, what will happen? Well, we don't rule out the possibility of collectors, but if we are talking about acquisition of collection owned by him, we will have a declaration of interest mechanism, and he may have to excuse himself from relevant discussions. Where can we have the mechanism? Well, there is already a mechanism for declaration of interest because they are already acquiring collections, and they have just reviewed it and uploaded it to the website of WKCDA, and if you're interested, we can let you see them. All right. Now, if you tell us that the M+ board will follow this mechanism, then at least I can be made aware of your criteria first, okay? I think Dr. Nivet has yet to have this opportunity to answer my question. If you want M+ to become one of its kind, there must be something unique about M+. So, Dr. Nivet, can you elaborate on the following? The building itself is already an icon, and can you explain to us
how in terms of the collection and way of display, and also partnership with world renowned museums to bring out the uniqueness of M+, so that we can be the leader of this kind of museums.
I think the unique aspect of M+ will be that we will tell the story of Hong Kong art in our region and in Asia as a part of a global movement, of a global history. Before, all stories about what's happened the last 70 years or so or more have been told from another angle. So we have a new perspective. I think when we talk about art, it will be unique. But it will be even more unique when it comes to design and architecture and film, because there is no museum in Asia that systematically have been collecting in order to be able to tell the story of the development of design in Asia, for example, or design and architecture in Asia. So that will make us totally unique. But at the same time, we will still be a global museum, an international museum, so we will be part of an international community. And we do know that the major museums in the world are very keen to find a partner that they can feel comfortable to collaborate with also. So it will be an exchange. I think that we will see ourselves sending exhibitions and works of art to the great museums in the world, but we will also be able to receive works from them in partnership with them. Okay, so I think it's a totally unique offer. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Nala Wong, 2 minutes. Regarding the acquisition of a collection, I've yet to hear about the transparency of the financial arrangements. I hope I can get an answer soon. And what is the artistic standard or the quality control or quality assurance for acquisition of collection? Can you tell us how this is ensured?
I mean, we are transparent to the extent that we talk about how much we spend on over the year and on different categories of whether it's art, design, architecture, film, moving image, and also from which part of the world. But we will not disclose the price of individual artworks for the simple reason that would mean that it would be very hard for us to negotiate as well as we do now in order to get discounts. We get, because we are many artists, collectors, dealers are very keen to see works in the M+ collection because it's very prestigious already. We get very good discounts. And if we started to sort of show these discounts, we wouldn't get them anymore. So that's the reason why we're very discreet about that. In terms of quality control, well, as we all know, that quality is a relative value in a way when it comes to art and culture. One person's sort of phenomenal work can be somebody else's work that they don't like at all. I think that the process we have put in place with especially the acquisition committee, which is composed of people who have expertise in the various fields that we collect, whether it's design, it's ink art, it's contemporary international art, it's architecture and so forth. They check and debate and question sort of the proposals and only agree to acquisitions when it's really gone through that very tough discussion forum. And I think they are the guarantees. Then time will tell. And I think at the present, if we look at the standing of our collection and what we do at the present, especially in international expert media, we can test ourselves against them. And I think we have a very good standing and already now garner a lot of support and respect. So, but time will tell. And it's not a permanent feature even.
Yeah.
我諗夠鐘啦，我都係問藏品嘅嘢。我最後，即係我覺得咧就。
We've been shown some pictures I don't know whether there will be some coordination between your collections and those of LCSD. You collect sewing machines, singers' sewing machine, and other things. You work as if you are collectors of different old items, or like a curio shop. And so how can you assess the value of your collections? You have repeatedly said that time will tell. But what kind of a time frame are we talking about? When are we going to be told? You should have some standard. And that should not be dependent on the passage of time. Who will take this question?
Well, I'm question, because of course you were talking about the Hong Kong artist Sarat Se, who is, I think, in her generation considered being one of the really truly rising stars. I think that I wouldn't be able necessarily to tell whether the rising stars of Cantonese opera are fantastic or terrible, because I don't have necessarily the tools to come to grips with that. And the same can go for contemporary art, of course. The more you know, the more you see, is a common saying in all aspects of life, including this. This is an artist who is considered very, very important and a rising star in the Hong Kong art community at the present. Of course, not everybody has to like her, but I think she's part of the story that's what is happening in Hong Kong right now, and what other artists are talking about, what inspires them, and what many collectors want to collect, for example. So I think it's important that that part of story is being collected. It is true, time will tell. Some works that are being acquired end up being seen as, maybe not so important 10 years later, while other works you are surprised how important they are seen to be. And there is a common, when you buy works by young artists, there's a common sort of model that is used globally all over the world, that if you buy young artists, if 10% of them turn out to be real masters, later on, you should be very, very happy, because you spent relatively little money on them and you have very early works of them which will be very valuable for the understanding of their works.
You mentioned, because LCSD has been mentioned, even for museums under LCSD, they have different positions. We have the History Museum, and therefore they want to get a Singer sewing machine reflecting what we use in the 60s. That will be featured in the Hong Kong story. I don't think they are not trying to tell you through this picture that they have a sewing machine, but rather that they are recreating certain artifacts through the medium of ceramics. So there are different exhibitions with different curators, and they will be doing the exhibitions for different themes and through different perspectives. In that case, you can borrow an old shop sign or a sewing machine from one of the LCSD museums, because these are the artifacts rather than artistic collections. Well, I think in that particular picture, the sewing machine was owned by the mother of the artist. All right, we can now move on.
A close dialogue with the LCSD museums, and we exchange information on our acquisitions and so forth continuously, including sewing machines.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to the next item. 第三個議程呢就
The third item, implementation of the integrated basement and infrastructure works for the WKCD. May I invite Mrs. Feng to give an introduction? Members, may I also remind you that according to our Rule 83 of our Rules of Procedure, if you want to declare interest, do so now. Either the direct or indirect pecuniary interest related to this item, please declare your interest. Mrs. Feng? Thank you, Chairman. This paper is related to the one on M+. we're going to submit a funding application. This is instrumental in the timely implementation of the M+ project. In January this year, we gave an introduction to the integrated basement and infrastructure works for the WKCD and also the timeline for submitting funding applications. We're going to do this in phases. We're going to seek funding approval from the Finance Committee of this Council for certain budgets in relation to the integrated basement and infrastructure works. In the middle of last year, we applied for funding approval for 3A and 3B of the advanced work. But at the end of last year, the funding application was not approved. In order not to delay the project any further or to push up the cost, WKCDA has agreed to shoulder the cost as a one-off arrangement so that 3A advanced work can could start earlier. And we informed the joint subcommittee that in this year we are going to submit an application for the second phase, and then we also ask the Finance Committee to reimburse WKCDA for the first phase project. So this application would cover what we applied for in the last application. We have completed the Gazzetto period because of road works and also reinstatement of some seawall would be involved. During the Gazzetto period, we have not received any objection. So here we would like to seek the joint subcommittee support for submitting the implications for the integrated basement and the relevant phases of the infrastructure works. Altogether, we're going to ask for $3.7 billion, as most of the works would happen underneath WKCDA site. It's highly integrated with M+ project. We would like the subcommittee to give its support so that we can approach the PWSC and the FC expeditiously for funding improvement, so that these works for the integrated basement and the infrastructure works can commence in tandem with the M+ project. As the executive director, as the CEO have told you that if the approval is not given timely, there will be difficulties for the progress of the entire project. I would like to invite WKCDA to give a PowerPoint presentation here. Yes, I would like to introduce the contents of the paper through a PowerPoint presentation. As the Permanent Secretary has said, we are here to seek your support for these funding applications. Number one, first and second stages of design, site investigation and construction works of the integrated basement under 673 CL part, as well as first construction package of infrastructure works under 745 CL part. This will tie in with the facilities that will be commissioned in the first phase, including M+ and the integrated performance venue and the park. They are instrumental for these other projects. Now let me talk about the project scope. Under 763 CL part will cover basement in different phases to tie in with the latest timetable of WKCDA city project. In the first stage, under Zone 3A, we are going to build the underground road and the airport express tunnels protection works. In the second phase, it will cover underground road and airport express tunnels protection works. And this will be highly integrated with the M+ topside development. So we have to do it concurrently with M+ topside project so as to tie in with the commissioning of M+ in 2018. In the 3B, we're talking about the basement design and foundations. We have to prepare the tendering document and also conduct assessment. In the second phase is about the foundations of the integrated foundations, including the protection works for the Airport Express. And this would be very highly integrated with the Lyric Theatre complex to tie in with the timetable of commissioning the Lyric or completion of the project for Lyric Theatre in 2020. We need to do both concurrently, and this is also important for the Airport Express tunnels protection work, and also the buildings, the complex and HOR developments. And also in order that the commercial and residential projects can be completed as soon as possible, there will be design and site investigation and preliminary designs and site investigations, as well as other topside development covered by 2A, 2B, and 2C, and also to tie with the other projects such as cultural performance centers, musical theatre, grand theatre. And therefore, we need to do the design and site investigation under 2A, and we believe we would like to start soon for 2B.
公室住宅用地發展項目嘅發展商去發展，因此
And for the second 2B stage, we have to start the preliminary design and site investigations, and also for budgeting purposes, the preliminary design will also form the basis of the requirements that will be imposed on future prospective developers of hotels, offices, and residential developments. For 2C, the preliminary design and site investigations will be subject to a further review. But we need to do 2C. We do the preliminary design and site investigation for budget estimate purposes, so as to make sure that 2C is compatible with 2A and 2B. And here this is the plan with some parts marked in orange or blue, marking up the first stage of design and advanced works. The orange part shows the construction of foundation works by WKCDA on behalf of government involving underground road, and then also there will be another area marked 3B. The facilities would have to be highly integrated, so we are going to ask the relevant authority to do part of the design work of 763 CL. As the Permanent Secretary, we submitted an application for 763 CL part last year. We intended to upgrade the project to grade A, but at the end of last year, the applications was not yet approved by the PWSC, and as a result, the timetable and the budget of the Lyric Theatre and so on and so forth was affected, and the WKCDA board decided to make an exceptional and one-off arrangement to do this design work and advanced work, and the government withdrew the funding applications on the 5th of January this year. At a joint committee meeting held on the 12th of January, members were updated on the progress of the integrated basement for WKCD and the timeline for the relevant funding applications. Members were given some papers and were informed of the alternative funding arrangement adopted for the first stage of design and advanced work, and also the fact that in mid-2015 the government would seek FC's approval of the costs associated with the first stage of works for transfer to the WKCDA in recognition of the works undertaken by the authority on behalf of the government.
呢一張幻燈投影片嘅平面圖呢，亦都表示咗呢763私有工程計劃部分綜合地庫嘅第2階段嘅設計同埋工地勘察建造工程嘅位置。紅色嘅部分呢，係建議委託俾管理局進行3A 區裏邊嘅主體工程，包括建造地下行車路啦，同埋現有機場快線隧道嘅保護工程、附屬工程同埋所需要。
And that would include the ancillary works and area in orange as construction of foundation works for entrustment to WKCD, including the protection of the XRL and the Airport Express. And for the area in blue, we intend to consult to employ a consultant for design, preliminary design, and site investigation. Depending on our progress, we expect that for the coming few years until 2017, we have to seek a total of $10 billion from LegCo. That is very similar to the amounts we reported to the joint subcommittee in 2012. In mid-2015, we plan to seek a funding approval of $2.9 billion, and in 2016-17, we will have to apply for funding for 3A and 3B remaining works and the construction works for Zone 2B, and the rough estimate of our estimated budget is $3 billion and $4 billion respectively. When we actually submit the funding application, we'll be more certain of the actual amount. And for the first construction package of 754 CL, we have to supply the needs of facilities that will be commissioned earlier, such as the parks and so forth. We will construct a 2.6 kilometer dual two-lane road linking up Holstein West, and there will also be a roadside bay of 2.6 kilometers long, and we will also have a construction of drainage, sewage, and water supply system for entrustment to WKCDA. If we cannot build these facilities, then because we need these facilities as a prerequisite for getting the occupation permit of the park in 2017 and Amplus in 2018, and we need to construct 2 laybys, and the gazette have already been completed. For 754 CL, part of the work is related to the park, to the free space, and also the Lyric Theatre complex. We propose to entrust them all to the WKCDA. Phase 1, the design, site investigation, and construction. We need about $2.9 billion, and for the first part of 763 CL, the amount is 754 CL is about $0.8 billion. We urge members to note our plan and to give support for the proposed upgrading of 763 CL and 754 CL. Dr. Wong and Mr. Wai Kwok have indicated their intention to speak. Anyone more? You call him Deputy Chairman. All right, 4 minutes each, questions and answers. Please be succinct. Ms. Chen Yan-Han. $21.6 billion for the superstructure. We were not told whether it was just for the superstructure. We're told by Carrie Lam at first that the basement would cost more than $10 billion, $100 billion. Oh, no, let me start once again.
We were told back then that it would be $10 billion, around $10 billion. Now, we're told that for these two phases, you need about $3 billion. So what will be the remaining budget? We're told that the total will be $23 billion. So they started with $21.6 billion for WKCD. We already said that you won't have enough. And now we're told that the basement would be done by the government and another $10 billion would be required. You will seek $3.9 billion first. What about the balance? So they are going to come back and ask for money in stages. I understand that for works it may be like that, but still it seems to be a bottomless pit. I think the Undersecretary PS, Mrs. Fung, you should be held accountable. Of course, you are not yet in this position, and also Mrs. Lee, you were not here. Someone surnamed Wen was responsible. We had numerous meetings with WKCDA. Now, near M+ and also the park, we asked whether for construction of the basement, should it be done in this way. We had more than 3 meetings with WCDA. On our side, we had professionals and engineers. We may differ in views in terms of design, but our proposal could save so much more money. Is it really necessary to have a basement car park? Frankly speaking, PS or Mrs. Fung, the administration has not accepted even one single bit of our proposal. When we worked on Tai Hom Estate, Eva gave us a surprise. The depot was not moved. Now I'm talking about Tai Hom Estate. Now I'm talking about this basement. The administration has not accepted one single bit of advice from us. Now this is so expensive, over $3 billion. And $23 billion, I don't know whether that will be the final bill. This is very different from what Carrie Lam told us. At first, he said it would be about $20 billion. So we don't know where this will end. If we don't give you money, then I'm worried you may not be able to cope. But if I give you money, it will be a precedent. If we do not allow you to construct the basement, it will be a big deal. Strictly speaking, of course, I want to criticize the WKCDA, but Mr. Wen from the HAB should be blamed more. So, PS, can you answer these questions? First, can you say for sure that $23 billion will be enough for the whole basement and you won't come back and ask for more? Because I feel rather aggrieved, as my colleague said, for Zone 3A, 3B, that is the park, the piazza, and also the infrastructure underground, plus 2B. Our estimate is $10 billion at this moment. We are asking for $3.7 billion this time, the integrated basement under 3A, and also the major infrastructure. These facilities are indispensable. Otherwise, the museum M+, our park, our lyric theater cannot be built without the integrated basement. So we must ask for money today. But if you ask me whether I can guarantee that $23 billion will be sufficient for all, I can't really give that undertaking. We are asking for money for site investigation so we can have a more accurate assessment, and then we can come back with a more certain estimate how much money is needed for everything. So I can only say that for Zone 3A, 3B, the park, we need about $10 billion. But at first we're told that $31.6 billion would be sufficient. There was full guarantee from the government, and we're asked to give you our approval. Now you still have to go through PWSC and FC. You have to be careful. How much are we talking about? I am worried that the final bill may come to $60 billion or $50 billion. I won't support or oppose your paper. I feel rather helpless. You still have to go through PWSC and FC, I'm afraid. All these questions must be answered first. Of course, we are all concerned. I said in the paper, you started with $21.6 billion as the estimate. And we're not told that there would be a big basement. And under Paragraph 4, it said that the basement was not known when funding approval was sought. When choosing the design, I thought the budget would have been taken into account. So when this plan was shortlisted with such a big basement, was there any idea that the basement would even be more expensive than the superstructure? Who is still in office now? In 2008, when the then HAB came to LegCo to ask for $21.6 billion, the estimate was to provide RODE and also the cultural facilities of WKCD. But they have not come to a stage where a detailed design was available. It was not until 2010 when we started a public consultation and the design competition that Norma Foster's design was chosen. One unique feature of his plan is to house all traffic underground so that we can have so much space above ground. If we have not placed everything underground, all the traffic underground, we won't have 23 hectares here. So it's a choice. Do we want more at grade space for the public to enjoy? But was there any financial assessment? Or did you just think that it's good that we have 23 hectares of land at grade? Was there any estimate, any paper? I believe there were preliminary figures. But then the construction costs in 2008, 2010, and 2015 are very different. We can show you with a formula the increase in costs. Now, we're able to tell you that with the money we seek here, we can build 3A, 3B, and also the basement, and also the park. If you ask whether the estimate back then is in line with the current one, I'm afraid the PS has to dig out all the documents as soon as possible to tell us whether there was any consideration of the financial aspects when the design was chosen, because the same question will be put to you at PWSC and FC. Right, $21.6 billion is just for a small WKCD, right? $21.6 billion won't be enough for the whole of WKCD, right? About $50.8 billion are for cultural facilities. Zone 1 and Zone 2 facilities can be built with that. What about Zone 3 or Phase 3? As I said, I'm afraid this budget won't be able to cover Phase 3. So $21.6 billion cannot cover the whole of WKCD. How much are you short? We have not come up with a detailed assessment, so we can't tell now. All right, there's a $23 billion. Will that be the final bill? Will it be all-inclusive? Well, there's an estimate done in 2010, and that is to build the basement at the same time. Now we are going to do it in phases. For 2A and 2C, we can't give you the costs now, but for 2B, we
believe it would be around $4 billion as shown on the plan. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I've declared my interest that I'm a member of WKCDA board, but there's no pecuniary interest involved. As regards the WKCD project, and in the conceptual plan, we have this basement. I participated in many workshops, small group discussion and forums. I was aware of this at that time. The idea is to make the best use, the optimal use of a great open space. We want to give Hong Kong people very good cultural districts with performing venues and open space. So one of the design features would be to locate many of the facilities underground. But when you want to make a distinction between government infrastructure projects and WKCD projects, yes, there's a need to tell them apart. In the first stage of design and site investigation, actually it's already done at the cost of WKCDA. It didn't happen a long time ago. It's just last year. And then there's a cost of $304.5 million because the PWSC and the FC have not yet been able to give its funding approval. So in order not to affect the progress of construction of M+ and other venues, the WKCDA board had no choice but to do it at its own cost first. Other projects, other related facilities and venues would be seriously affected if this is not approved expeditiously. I don't have any specific questions because I've been involved very closely in all the stages. I would like the PWSC and FC to consider the applications quickly, because if we keep dragging our feet, the cost will escalate. This is already a well-known fact for all. Mr. Yip Kok Kim, my turn. Okay, Chairman, thank you. I think the one who is most qualified to offer comments on this is the Vice Chairman here, and I would say I'm second in line in terms of experience. I think we are all very concerned about this cultural project. We want to have a cultural district in West Kowloon. At that time, the funding was for $21.6 billion. It was based on factors that we had back then. But now, it's many years after the initial application was approved. So can we still live within this funding budget of $21.6 billion? I think only the government can tell. But I would also point out that $21.6 billion would not cover road works. And that was supposed to be the responsibility of the government. And in the consultation conducted in 2010, well, it was a very good consultation exercise. Many people offer comments, and there was a committee, a joint committee, overseeing the progress I believe I remember that there was on one occasion we went on a site visit. But unfortunately, there were only me as the chairman and another member who was late, and we went on an inspection with Mr. Lynch, and we afterwards gave our endorsement to the design. Now it's time to implement the project. So I would say on that basis, I would give the applications my support. But are all the steps arranged reasonably? We need to get more detailed information. But I think, on the whole, I think that the phased approach is appropriate. Yes, it's expensive to have underground projects, and that was known back then. So how can we resolve this question of budget exceedance, because it would not be covered by the $21.6 billion? Some members said back then that it would be okay to ask for more later, but not me. I just want members to be informed of the decision back then. For the funding applications considered this time, I would give my support. Otherwise, it would remain a construction site. I don't subscribe to the views held by some that we are creating white elephants. Vice Chairman, what do you say? At the time, Mr. Henry Tang, the then Chief Secretary for Administrations, undertook most seriously that it would not exceed $21.6 billion, and we benefited by a research report of our own Secretariat staff. And they said they would be able to live with it, and now it's been proved that they can't. So let bygone be bygone. I don't want to have something neither fish or fowl created at the end of the process, according to, as we have been briefed by Dr. Nevid. We have high expectations of M+, for example. If we don't give the funding approval, well, M+ is exactly on top of the basement. If we want to be a pioneer, we want to seek some breakthrough, we want to be leaders, pioneers, and we want to be unique. Nothing would happen if you don't have the basement. How can you build the topside structures? It's like a chair without any legs. So, what should I say? I think we should take one step at a time. I think we have to give them the funding. But I hope in the government's paper submitted to the PwC and subsequently to the FC, you must explain clearly that you are doing this in phases. And then for 2A, 2C, when would the projects be built? We don't know. Or whether it will be built, they will be built, we don't know. Have you set aside funds for that? You are going to do 3A, 3B. Well, you have some estimate for 2B, and I believe you are going to do 2B. But 2A, 2C may not realize. Are we going to waste any money if we decide not to do those? Now WKCDA has spent money on our behalf, and we are going to give them $300 million. No, 3 billion. 300 million? $300 million. And then the government is going to auction land to generate revenue. On top of the basement, there will be different facilities in the future. Is there going to be a revenue sharing arrangement? Would that lead to any dispute or disagreement? We need to get some inkling of what would be provided. I hope all these can be put in the government application. Of course, I must say I'm not at all happy about this, because the CS4A, the then CS4A, was so sure about this. And now we want to put Hong Kong on the map of international cultural scene. We have no choice but to take one step at a time. All right, so I think that's a request for more information. I think in principle, members agree or do not object to submit these applications, whether irrespective of what we get at the end, whether it's going to be something nice or something neither fish nor fowl. All right, if there's nothing under AOB, then the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.